Hi, I'm Lorraine Ballard-Morrill, Director of News and Community Affairs for iHeartMedia in Philadelphia and WDAS-FM. August is National Minority Donor Awareness Week, and that's what we're here to do today is talk about organ donation. We've got folks in the studio with us that are going to tell us a lot of good information, try to make sure that our preconceptions and our misconceptions about organ donation are laid to rest, and encourage us all to be potential organ donors. We've got with us Kimberly Manders. She is Gift of Life transplant coordinator, and Tamar Ellsworth is a double lung transplant recipient. Timmy Nelson is a kidney recipient. Marquita Lewis, she's a veteran. She's been with us many times. She's a donor mom. And another returning veteran is Irvin Miller. He's a kidney recipient. I'm going to start with you, Kimberly, and ask you, first of all, to describe why it's so important for us to be considered a potential organ donor, especially during this Minority Organ Donor Awareness Month.
Okay, thank you for having me first. Being an organ donor is extremely important, and this week is important in the life of organ donation because there are so many minority persons waiting on the organ donor list. And some of the myths that exist in our community are potentially life-threatening to people because we don't know how much we can be of help and service. We locally have about 5,300 people in 2017. A little over 5,300 were on a waiting list just locally in our area for organs. And out of that, there were over 4,300 people that were waiting for kidneys. And I think what happens is people look at persons that they know, and a lot of people know in their family that may be on dialysis, and they see them in their minds living life, and they think that because they go out the house and they're not in the hospital, that is living. And if you would talk to someone who is on kidney dialysis, they'll say that it changes every aspect of your life.
Yes.
And it's important for us to talk about that because prior to, I think, within the last couple of years, the rules around kidney allocation changed. Mm-hmm. Prior to that, we had about a third of the people on the waiting list for kidney transplants were African American, and only about 25, and that's on the entire list, and only 25% were being transplanted. We're fortunate that we have a Dr. McCauley here at Thomas Jefferson University at the Transplant Institute, and he served on UNOS, and he was pretty instrumental in getting some of the rules that unintentionally affected minority persons changed. One of the things that he was able to do through the work on the committees and with other people working alongside him was to get the rules adjusted where the way we matched persons for kidneys unintentionally affected minorities because race was a factor.
Right.
And with that, because there are more people that are not African American that are donors as a majority, there were more people that African Americans didn't necessarily match up to. We couldn't. And so they looked at that and they looked at the allocation factors and said, how can we keep it fair and make it different? And they realized that there was a different way we could do tissue matching.
Well, we'll get back to that in just a second, but I'd like to move on to Tamar. Tamar, you are a double lung transplant, which 20 years ago, they weren't doing that. But I wonder if you could tell us your story. When did you find out that you needed a transplant? And then when you found out you needed a double lung transplant, tell us more about it.
Okay, in 1998, I was diagnosed with sarcoidosis. And I had the disease and had been living with it, and it was stabilized. But then I got to a point where my health started to plummet, and it started with my lung collapsing. I went to a conference in upstate Pennsylvania. The high altitudes must have had an effect on it. My lung collapsed, and from that moment on, I was on oxygen 24/7, and they told me I had about 2 years before I would need new lungs. At the time, I was grossly overweight. I weighed 262 pounds, so I didn't qualify. So the main idea was for me to lose the weight during that time so that I could make transplant, and I was able to do so. So I transplanted in 2009. There were a lot of complications. I was allergic to the heparin. I was a very hard match, and that had me on ECMO. And ECMO is a life support system that they placed me on until they could find a donor. And I was on there for about 10 days before they found one. And then the transplant was complicated. Had allergic reactions to things. But I made it through. I was in the hospital for 3 months. The average transplant double lung is 3 weeks. I was there for 3 months. There were infections. There were a lot of things that happened. The heart was damaged. They couldn't attach the lungs initially.
And here you are.
Yeah, here I am.
Looking beautiful.
Thank you.
And healthy, and
Yes.
that's really a miracle.
It is. It is.
I'd like to get back to you in just a second, but let's move on to Timmy. You have
Thank
a
you.
kidney transplant.
That's correct.
So tell us what led up to having that transplant.
Well, first I found about it accidentally. I went in January of 2013 to have a minor back surgery. The next day I was up walking around, no issues, no problems, but they kept me for 7 days because they discovered then that my creatinine level was not where it should be. Well, fast forward December of 2013, I began dialysis. Once I got over the shock of being on dialysis and accepted the possible mortality issues that go along with that, I then realized that I needed to change my mindset a little bit. And that's when I started focusing on the things that I need to do to make sure that when I became a transplant candidate, that I was the best candidate possible. So I started the process, went in for my first evaluation, and they told me that basically you're in pretty good shape, but you just need to make sure you're in the best physical shape and you adhere to your dialysis prescription so you're the best candidate when the time comes. Well, fast forward again, it's been just over a year. In fact, on July 21st of last year, so just over a year this year, was when I was called in for a transplant. And it's been a great year. It's my new lease on life, put it that way.
When you got that call, what was that like?
Beyond elation. After 3.5 years on dialysis, I kind of accepted the fact that, well, if I don't get a kidney, this is my new normal.
Right.
So to be able to do the things that I used to do, even more effectively than I used to do, to be more active like I was before, it is a new lease on life, no question about it.
That's beautiful. Marquita, you've been with us many times, and each time you are here, you have a story that is definitely powerful. And you are a donor mom. And for those who've never heard your story before, please share with us your story.
Well, thanks again for having me back. May 31st, 2014, my 13-year-old son, Marquise Wood, had an asthma attack and went into cardiac arrest. And we sat in a hospital for a couple of days. I kind of remember the story, conversation I had with my boys. My oldest son is 22. I found out I had lupus in 2008, and we didn't know much about it. But in reading, Marquise read that I may need a kidney. I told him, don't worry about it. The hospital had plenty. And he told me I didn't need nobody's kidney but his. So I remembered that conversation, and I decided to donate my son's organs. And I cannot tell you, not only did my son save 3 lives, but organ donation saved my life too. You know, I have a lot to still smile about, knowing that 3 young men are doing everything they should be doing as young men, and that gives me a lot of hope and a lot of love.
Marquita, I wonder if you can go through a little bit of what your thought process was. Because when faced with such a difficult time, you know, when you're facing your son's passing, to have to make a decision like that, clearly his wishes prior to all this happening affected you and guided you. But what was it that moved you to allow this to happen, where maybe some people would not?
Well, I couldn't just walk out of that hospital and just leave him like that. You know, once I decided, and after CHOP dropped everything but the roof on him so that they can let me know that he was really brain dead, you know, I knew I couldn't go home just like that, that I would never be in a good place. My other 2 kids know I love them to death, but everybody knows Marquise was my favorite. So I knew I couldn't just go home like that. And I kind of thought, you know, once I said yes to organ donation, I thought, you know, they'll just take what they want and, you know, whatever anybody can use. But, you know, it really made me smile knowing that it was a process. You know, they give you a list of all your organs and tissues, and you as the family member get to decide which you want. to donate. And because it was just all, so fast to me, I decided to donate his heart, his kidneys, and his liver. And everything was able to be transplanted. And all 3 young men are doing good 4 years later with their new gift. So, I know a lot of times families don't want to hear it when it comes down to having to approach them about it. But, I can't express enough on how much it helped me. I still have a lot to smile about. I have a new family with the gift of life. I'm able to go out into the community and talk about organ donation. I was able to educate myself more on organ donation. So, and I'm glad I did it.
Yeah.
I'm glad I did it.
Yeah, and you've made a huge difference in this
Yes.
whole field of organ donation, and
Thank you.
your message is really powerful. So thank you for
Thank you.
that. Irvin, you also received a kidney. How long has it been?
It'll be 9 years this December.
Wow, 9 years. What's the difference that organ donation made in your life?
I would say after the kidney transplant, it really caused me to really reflect on life and just timing. Being on dialysis 3 days a week, 3.5, 4-hour sessions, it was just really draining. And so at the time I was teaching in the classroom, so I would teach all day, get out of school at 2:30, leave my students, and then run to the dialysis unit to be hooked up to a machine by 3 o'clock. To then come home and sleep throughout the night and not feel somewhat normal into your non-dialysis treatment days. And then that night you're dreading because you have dialysis the next morning. So just being able to have the time to get that time back, but then just to really reflect on, the true purpose of life and living it out and being thankful for that gift of life.
Yeah.
So.
Kimberly, let's talk about the preconceptions and stereotypes and, downright falsehoods that people often carry with them around organ donation. As Marquita very eloquently said, basically, she knew that her son was brain dead. And I think sometimes people have that preconception that doctors won't work as hard to save a person's life because they're interested in the organs. But we know that that's not true, and that doctors who are actually treating the patient don't necessarily make those decisions. So I wonder if you can clarify what exactly goes into making the decision to do an organ donation.
Okay. When a patient presents, the first thing is a lot of people don't want to put organ donation on their license. One of the biggest myths is that if I put organ donation on my license, they won't do anything for me. They won't treat me. Some people even believe that they will be left to die on the street because people don't realize that it's such a rare opportunity. Only about 2% of the people in the country that pass away have the ability to be an organ donor, because you have to actually be on a ventilator and then have an irreversible brain injury or a non-survivable injury. And you have to be on a ventilator at the time. So a lot of people are afraid to do it because of that. So that's the first myth to get out there. If anything, we wouldn't even know that you were an organ donor until you actually presented to the hospital or were actually being treated. And even then, we come in and we evaluate each person. And like I said, it's only 2% of people, so everybody doesn't qualify. So what we're able to do is we're able to look at people and look at the injuries and look at their health condition and to determine whether they are potentially medically suitable to be organ donors. And the hospitals work very hard to protect their patients and their families. That is their first priority.
Right.
And they cover and protect their patients in a way. And we go in and evaluate people, but we don't overstep. We don't even approach families normally until after a person, if they are brain dead, has been pronounced. The only time we would approach someone early is if they are in the potential to save someone's life and the family is thinking about withdrawing. And in that case, or if the patient becomes medically unstable and that gift opportunity that Marquita said would be lost, then that's the only time we would approach someone early. Other than that, we evaluate people, we see that they're a possibility in a position to save lives, and we allow the healthcare team to do everything they can possibly do to save people. And then after that, when I took this job, I was very nervous about speaking to moms like Marquita. Mm-hmm. I didn't know how people would respond. I'm a nurse. I had been on the other side. I was thinking that maybe I would be intruding on people. And what I found is that for families that make the decision to be an organ donor or allow their loved ones to be organ donors, it's the best thing for them if that's the decision they made. A lot of times it does what Marquita says, which is stops them from leaving the hospital empty-handed. It allows them to leave changing whatever the story is. The last person their loved one was able to do was actually save someone's life.
Yeah, and I've seen many cases where it doesn't always happen because there's confidentiality. So sometimes the family of a donor family may or may not meet the recipient's family, but sometimes they do. And in those cases, there's an amazing connection that occurs. But even if you don't meet that family, you know that because of that donation, someone was able to live.
Absolutely. And even if a family, what some people don't realize is some recipients, they've gotten this awesome gift, but sometimes they feel like a tremendous, and some of the recipients can talk about this, sense of responsibility. And they're not sure how the donors' families will feel about the gift that they've received. And what I can assure you is that whether you meet the donor family or not, you are a part of the Gift of Life family. We have support groups. We have people around. We try to do things to reach out to families. So your gift is not unwanted. I work every day, sometimes 24 hours, not just for my donor families, but to save someone I will never meet. And I can always say that even on a bad day, it's a good day because I know that there's somebody like Tamar or Irvin or Timmy that's life was saved, and a mom that's in a position of Marquita who is saved in a different kind of way by the things that we do.
Right. Tamar, how long have you been living with a double lung transplant?
Since 2009. I
2009.
transplanted September the 7th.
Since 2009, what are some things in life that you've been able to experience that you may not have experienced had it not been for this transplant?
I was able to go to Italy, and I became a personal trainer.
Really?
I started working out.
Okay.
I was able to see my son graduate from college, which was really something I didn't know I would say. And I was able to return to work part-time.
Wonderful. And what about you, Timmy? What do you feel that you are now able to experience that perhaps you might not have?
Well, it's the experience I'm going through is giving back. I know how I felt when I went through the process from diagnosis of kidney disease to transplant. And so it's renewed my commitment to help other folks. And so I do a lot of volunteer work now. In fact, across the state of Pennsylvania and in Delaware, talking with other kidney patients, dialysis patients, about the process and trying to encourage them to do what they need to do to become a recipient.
Marquita, you're about to go to Utah, right?
Yes.
Yeah, tell us why.
So I'll be joining Team Philadelphia in Utah. It's for the transplant games, and the transplant games are like the Olympics, but everyone that'll be participating has had a life transplant, an organ donor has been transplanted. So everybody that'll be playing basketball has had a kidney, a liver, a heart, and we go down there as donor families to encourage them and root them on and be their cheerleaders. Like I said, being a donor family, we're very proud of our decision, and it really makes us smile knowing that people are getting a second chance of life. So we go to the transplant games and we support all the athletes. And also while we're out there, we do some fun things just for donor families. We'll be doing bowling, and we do a butterfly release for our loved ones. So my first time going was 2 years ago in Ohio, and I really enjoyed it. I met a lot of donor moms from all over. Actually 3. We've always kept in touch, so we're looking forward to seeing each other in Utah. And, it just really makes me feel good as a donor family and, my decision, more stuff that I can smile about.
Right, that's wonderful. Now, Irvin, when you were undergoing dialysis, I think that there are a lot of people that don't really understand what that process is like. And I think, as Kimberly mentioned, we look at someone like you, and you go in, you look, relatively healthy, and they don't realize what you're going through. And I wonder if you can kind of describe what that process is while you're waiting for that kidney.
So I think the drastic change for me is I'm a foodie, so I love to eat. And so when I was told that I was in kidney failure and on dialysis, my diet changed drastically. So I was reduced to 40 ounces of liquids a day. Could not eat pizza or tomato sauce or anything of that nature. If I wanted potatoes, I had to soak them. There were specific things that I had to do from a dietary standpoint, just because the body was not able to process regularly with the kidney disease. And within that particular process, you're hooked up to a machine, and the dialysis machine basically cleans your blood. So there's a filter. And so the blood is pumping out of your body, going through a filter, and then going back into your body. They also regulate and monitor your weight as well. So if you're gaining weight excessively, then it's a key indicator that you have you're retaining more fluid. So that means that they will be taking more fluid off through dialysis. So at first, when I was on dialysis, I was getting slick and drinking everything while on the machine, thinking it wouldn't be noticeable. And then they would weigh me and say wait, you've gained more weight. What's going on? So just, Timmy mentioned earlier, following the prescription as far as what you're supposed to be doing, and just really following the orders and getting used to that new normal is the biggest thing.
How long was it that you had to wait before you got your transplant?
So I was only on the list for less than a week.
Wow.
And
that's unusual.
Why, very unusual.
Yeah.
The reason why is because I actually donated to my mom in 2002. So my mom needed a kidney transplant. And in me donating to her, they found out later after she passed away that I had the genetic condition of what she had, which is extremely rare. And so with me donating to her, donors get first preferential treatment. So as soon as I was listed, I got the notification that it was approved, and I was listed on a Tuesday, and I received a phone call 3 o'clock Saturday morning saying that, I had a potential match and I had to go down and go and donate blood and everything so that they could cross-reference to see exactly if it would be a good fit.
Wow, that's amazing. And actually, that does bring up the point that if you are a living donor, then that puts you up on the list much higher, much quicker. So they're living donors as well as donors that are from individuals who are brain dead or are severely injured and will not recover. So let's talk. There are a couple more preconceptions that I want to make sure that we cover before we close out. And I know that some people think that religion is something that will get in the way of your ability to donate. But religion, I don't know of any religion, or do you know of any religion that really precludes getting or giving a donor organ?
No, the Catholic organization, Baptist, Islamic religion, they all are okay with organ donation. If you go on most of their websites, the Pope put out a message about it. There's no major religious order that precludes it. It's a life-saving thing, and most religions, giving your life for someone else or helping someone is something that is a basic tenet of most religions.
I wonder if we can just go down the line and talk about what your message would be to anyone who's listening or watching this as a video about why it's so important and why people should consider becoming a potential organ donor. I know that for me, it's on my license plate. On my license. It's also, I have a medical, what do you call those things, where you let people know in advance? Thank you. A medical directive, I always forget. Letting people know that if it were the case that, that nothing can be done, I want my organs to be donated. I've made it super clear to all of my family members as well. I wonder if each of you can also just talk to folks out there who are hesitating, who may think that, no, that's not for me, why they should do it. Tamar?
I've always been a donor. It's always been on my license. I believe in it. I know that it's my organs are more helpful to someone else if I'm not able to use them. I don't believe in just throwing them away. And I'm very aware of the fact that African Americans are difficult matches and that we are the ones who often need organs and can't get them. And I always ask, whenever I'm in a position where I'm working with the gift of life, I always say, well, what if you need one? Would you want one?
Right.
And that kind of changes the aspect of the way they feel about it. I had a couple people actually sign up based on that idea.
Yeah, good for you, Tamar. Timmy?
Well, I also have always, I can't remember when I didn't have it on my license. And my thought process is that with the religious beliefs that I have, that at the moment you pass away, the most important part is gone. So the rest can be left for someone else to better their life also.
Marquita?
My message is to get educated. I really just want every African American to just get educated. We have to stop believing myths. Myths are fairy tales. We have to start believing facts. And I will not stop until all these myths are gone and people have actual facts and that we're at 100% in Pennsylvania. And I just will not stop.
Excellent, Marquita. Thank you so much. Irvin?
I think just taking into consideration everything that everyone has shared, saying yes to finding out more information about organ donation, saying yes to if you're in a position to be a donor family, saying yes if you're in a position to be a recipient. That's the most important message, the word yes, because once you say that, so many other doors are going to open up and you'll have an open mindset to learning more about it and then having a life-changing experience from that point moving forward.
Kimberly, before we close out, I would like you to maybe describe a little bit about what it is. You actually are a transplant coordinator. So when you get the call, there's an organ available. What happens? What is the process? It must be tremendously exciting and kind of like stressful, all those things. Tell us more what it's like.
So the initial call is not always that an organ is available. The initial call is that there is a person that needs to be evaluated that could potentially save people's lives. I'm a nurse. Most of our transplant coordinators are nurses, EMTs, or in some cases, respiratory therapists. And we go out and we initially just do an evaluation to see if that person is medically suitable. And if they are, and the time comes where they are either pronounced brain dead or they're going to have care withdrawn, we would then speak to the family and present the opportunity that like only 2% of people in the country have to be able to save people's lives. If that family says yes, that's when we actually stay. We can work up to 24 hours at a time. I have the wonderful opportunity of evaluating that patient further, entering their information in UNOS. Everybody sees on TV where there's a person looking for a match. I work with teams that are in and outside of Gift of Life to try to find recipients. We don't try to find one person for every organ. We may try to find a primary person. Some of our kidney and lung recipients will know that, and then we call backups. Because our donor may be okay, but we're talking about a sick person on the other end. And then we have the exciting opportunity to be able to go to the OR and be in the organ in the recovery. We get to fly teams in from around the United States and then allow the transportation of the organs back to those recipients. And then outside of that, we get to do things like work with our donor families, work with persons like yourself and iHeartRadio. We do education in the hospitals. We work with our community services on fairs. We do whatever we can to make people realize that what they think happens so often happens so rarely. And a hospital as big as, say, Temple University, maybe less than 50-something or so people were actually organ donors in 1 year. And so you think of how many people were there and then how many people actually were able to be donors.
And there are a lot of people on
And
the
there are
waiting
a lot of
list.
people on the waiting list.
Well, let's hope that there are fewer people on the waiting list, because all of the people listening and all the people watching will sign up. Marquita, I know that you know what the website is and what people need to do, so tell us.
You can go to www.donors1.org. Please, www.donors1.org. Please go get educated.
Absolutely, absolutely. It is August National Minority Donor Awareness Month and week, and we want to make sure that everyone understands that we can all make a huge difference. Make sure that you make your family and your loved ones aware that you would potentially like to be an organ donor. I want to thank all of you so much for joining us. Kimberly Manders, who's Gift of Life Transplant Coordinator, Tamar Ellsworth, a double lung transplant recipient, Timmy Nelson, a kidney recipient, Marquita Lewis, a donor mom, and Irvin Miller, who's a kidney recipient. Thank you all for what you do, for getting the message out. It is so important, and hopefully more people will understand how critical it is and what they can do to make a huge difference in the lives of someone that they may not even know, but they can save a life. I want to thank you so much. I'm Lorraine Ballard Morrill.